I'm in trouble. Okay. Do it again. Okay, I think I have to do it again.
Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployer from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips. Give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Okay, here we are again. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I just want to say my name is Dawn Jackson, and I'm here today with Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Marieamma Willis. And I wanted to share that today we're going to be discussing about ADHD and the impact of ADHD on children, the stigmas around that, and hopefully a new way of looking at it. So I want to open with this quote. ADHD is probably one of the most misunderstood mental health disorders that affects almost 10% of children aged 13 through 17 per the CDC. ADHD, according to Stephen Hinshaw, a distinguished professor of psychology at UC Berkeley, says or calls ADHD a self-regulatory disorder, not an attention deficit. This personally is a subject close to my heart. As a woman that struggled with self-regulation and organization and impulsivity that impacted my life and relationships, after many years, I learned there was a way through the rubble, or I should say the trouble, that I thought I would never get through. With me today is Marieamma Willis. Marieamma Willis is an educational therapist and learning success coach in private practice. She has been teaching, developing educational programs, and presenting workshops for over 30 years. She is co-author of the Self-Portrait Power Traits Assessment with Victoria Hodson and the book Discover Your Child's Learning Style, My Book of Me Student Workbooks, and Light Heart Parenting Courses. Other books include What to Do When They Don't Get It and Learning Doesn't Have to Hurt. Visit her website if you're interested in more of these topics. So first of all, I just want to say that it is such a great pleasure for me and a privilege and an honor to be here with you today, Marieamma.
Thank you.
So this is a long time coming. I mean, I've wanted to interview for a really long time. And I'm like, what can we do, right? Well, ADHD is super, super close to my heart, as you know. In my work and coaching families with students with ADHD and my special education work. But being with you today, I just want to share how you and Victoria changed my life over 13 years ago. Over 13 years ago, I was working in a school as a special education teacher, and your program came into our school, and I was selected out of many because of my interest in learning styles to come alongside and be trained and certified through your program. I was completely changed forever. Little did I know the impact that would have on my life. Little did I know how at 50 years old, God would use your work to help me understand the person that he created in me. I grew up feeling completely shamed about my personality, like I was kind of a weirdo. I was too talkative. I said things too fast and too loud. And it was a constant shaming of my life. Fortunately for me in school, I was a really good student. So teachers loved me. They didn't ever, put me under the spotlight or call me out. But in my personal relationships, I was called out. In my relationships with many of my family members who didn't understand the way I behaved. Frankly, neither did I, because I didn't understand the way my brain worked. So I'm really excited today that we get to talk about that a little bit, not just for me, about me, but really about many children that experience this topic of ADHD. So I'd like to just start with, when did you start questioning what ADHD really was?
So my master's is in special ed. And in that program, of course, we would have had all of those learning disability labels, like just plain a learning disability, dyslexia, ADD, ADHD, hyperactive, all of those. And so after I graduated, I became the director of a clinic for kids that had learning disabilities of any kind. So I started working with them in real life, not just, like practice at school and what you learn at school. And it didn't work. I mean, what I learned didn't work. So I started to do my own investigating and, just like experimenting with kids, like, okay, she still doesn't get how to put a sentence together. What do I do? And so I just made things up and started to see that, oh, she's really good at drawing. Like, she's amazing at drawing. She's 8 years old. She can, do a whole portrait, which of course I cannot do. But she's having trouble stringing a sentence together. So what can I do? I'm going to use her strength. I'm going to use her drawing. So anyway, I started like just experimenting with this, and things started working. So I thought, there's got to be more to this that I don't know. What don't I know that they didn't teach me in teacher school? And I went looking, and I found the whole field of learning styles and strengths. And I started to learn about that, and then eventually came up with my own system. And I met Victoria Hodson. You mentioned her. She became my partner in this, work. And we then created our own strengths assessments, wrote the book about it and all of that. So the thing is that all of these things that are called learning disabilities, it's just differences in ways of learning. And our schools and classrooms and even homeschools, because, that's what we know from our experience, they're all set up for what we call the organized disposition.
Right.
And the auditory listening learner and the writing learner and the print learner. That's the magic formula. So if you're not that, if you're an imaginative disposition or curious disposition, spontaneous, or some of the others, sitting there doing worksheets does not work for you. And so what happens is, well, you know what? I'm going to read something to you. This was in the, it's the Children's Therapy Center. We used to have this place in Ventura where I live. And this was all about ADD, 1997 in the Learning Disabilities newsletter, okay? So it says, knowledge of ADD or attention deficit disorder first came from the study of children. We now understand it continues into adulthood. About 5% of school-age children have ADD. Now this is, 1997. Okay, so that's what they had. But here's what's going on. It says, ADD is a neurological problem. It's often present at birth, but may not be diagnosed until the elementary years because the symptoms go unnoticed at home. Now, that's the first clue, okay? Why do they go unnoticed at home when they're little, if, they get to preschool or whatever, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh. So now here, if this wasn't like, sad, it would be funny. So here's what it says next. So the symptoms go unnoticed at home, okay? because we intuitively adapt to the needs of our children. But when sustained attention is required for boring, repetitive tasks in distracting situations like classrooms, the symptoms become easier to see. Now, the first time I read this in 1997, I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, what are you telling us? That we're supposed to be okay with boring, repetitive tasks in distracting situations?
Right.
And if we're not, then there's something wrong with us and we have
Right.
ADD.
Right.
So it's a really weird kind of a thing. And at the same time, there was this, just a couple of years later, this other article in the newspaper that said, did Ben Franklin have ADD? Benjamin Franklin might have had attention deficit disorder. Why else would a man go out in a rainstorm with a key on a kite, hoping for lightning to strike it? And so when you look back at all of our famous inventors, scientists, and all, like Einstein didn't do well in school, and people are told, you'll never get anywhere. And it's because of that. They have this different learning system in their brain. And I mean, we all have to learn self-regulatory things.
Right.
But
right.
let's do it through our strengths instead of letting, like you grew up thinking there was something wrong with you. That should not have happened. There was nothing wrong with you. You just had these strengths. And then you needed to learn how to be in a social situation.
Right.
And
right. And also with that imaginative piece, and also I'm spontaneous.
Yes.
So imagine this creative brain that moves a lot. And so you can, and everyone knows who watches this podcast, I'm the moving one. Everyone else is very calm. But there's that can be overwhelming for people.
Yes. But if you learn what it is about you,
right,
then you can go, oh, it's a good thing. Okay.
Yeah.
But then let me see, how would I do it if I were here? Because other people need this. I need this. They need that. How do we work it all out? Orville Wright was expelled from 6th grade for bad behavior. These are the spontaneous people. Jay Leno, we all know who he is, a comedian. He had a 5th grade teacher who said, if Jay spent as much time studying as he does trying to be a comedian, he'd be a big star. What? See how crazy that is?
Oh my goodness.
So there are all these, we just need to really get rid of the labels. I know so many, psychologists and experts and all they keep talking about them, but if we just got rid of them and we just said, what are you good at? How does learning work for you? How does this work for you? What do you need when you need to memorize? What kind of strategy do you need when you're in a room with a bunch of people and you're having a discussion? What are some skills that you can learn? But before that, what are you really good at that we can focus on? Let's focus on what you're good at.
I love that so much, because typically if students don't work or fit in a certain situation, like I say, the box, right, then they're shamed. There is something wrong with them. And I know as a special education teacher for over 13 years, we had kiddos coming into our classrooms, and I was like, why are they here? Why did they get diagnosed? Like, they're just creative children that think differently and learn differently. And that's one of the reasons why I changed up and went into more coaching and helping parents to understand, like yourself, how their children, how they actually think, and how the disposition and learning styles are so essential in understanding those. And I wanted to ask you, one of the passions of my heart is girls with ADHD, because as we know, girls oftentimes do not get noticed. If they, if you want to say the label ADHD, They go unnoticed. But the problem is there is a societal pressure, and I still think it's real, that girls should be perfect, that girls should do everything well. And when they don't do certain things well, like say they're really doing well in math, but they're reading and spelling, they're not doing well. Oftentimes, parents don't understand that and accidentally may shame that child or pressure them like, what's wrong with you? You're just not trying. And it could just be something in the way they're understanding that information, or they're able to grasp more tangible things like math versus more fluid things like language arts or spelling. And so they can be shamed, and they can be shamed by a teacher like, you're just being lazy. You're just being this, you're just being that. And that's how I felt growing up. And I felt that as a young woman as well. Like, why can't I get my relationships right? What's wrong with me? Why do I say too much? Why do I talk too much? Why do I say everything I think and feel? And so, yeah, over time, I learned to regulate that and understand a lot of neat things around that, which I won't get into now. But the shame that was around that was huge for me. And I still think that's true for girls today, because think of this: if they feel they are stupid, and if they tell themselves, if I just try harder, if I were a better person, and, I would be invited to the parties, but because I blew the candles out at my friend's birthday over here, no one's going to invite me anymore because of that impulsivity. What happens, girls in puberty and going into teen and early adult are very high risk for self-injury. And you and I have talked about this, and also suicide attempts. Boys also are at an increased risk, but more so girls. And I think it's because girls feel that shame. They carry it alone. They're like the Lone Ranger by themselves. They don't know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to talk about it. If I hadn't had your assessment, the self-portrait, I would have never understood that there is nothing wrong with me. Matter of fact, I'm wonderful. And that is something that you and Victoria celebrated with me all the time. Like, we're just like, oh, we love your energy. We love your joy,
Yeah.
your enthusiasm. Like, you guys probably, made that fire go a little bigger. But girls feel shame. And I'm very, very passionate about that. And I want to share that non-suicidal self-injury has gone up significantly in the last 20 years.
Is that for girls specifically?
For girls specifically. But girls, just neurotypical girls, 1 in 5 is the self-injury, but a child with self-regulation or these kinds of self-esteem issues about who they are, it's double. It's actually double. Negative messages they get from a very young age and feeling that deep pain inside often leads to self-infliction. Now, I didn't do it that way. I did it other ways, through my emotions and mental, pulling away from people, pulling away, thinking no one likes me. I'm just a weirdo. I'm going to go over here and be an artist. I'm just going to paint myself till I die, But that was a lie. That was a lie from the pit of hell. That's what I want to say right now. Even though I did suffer the consequences in certain relationships. And I'm really sorry for that, but I didn't understand, and like I understand now. So I want to ask you, what do you think life could look like for a child? Now, we're going to call this child the imaginative child for a minute, okay? Because we're trying to redefine this title, this label. How would you identify the negative side of an imaginative child, what they might struggle with, and then the positive once they understand what that really means?
Well, so the imaginative person who starts out as a child,
True.
a lot of that is in their own heads. So, see if this resonates with you. I think it does. Because, I think we should say that is one of your highest dispositions, right?
Yes.
So imaginative is like, just thinking and coming up with amazing ideas, and sometimes not following through, because then you're on to the next thing. Does that sound like you? Like,
Oh yeah.
oh,
And
this
you and I
sounds
have
so
talked
fun,
about,
right? So fun, and I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. And then you
right.
might start it, but then, the joke is it's the person that starts a bunch of projects and then they're all sitting there because you get bored with it, and then you want the next one and the next one. But still, it's a very much of an alone kind of a thing. It's not like that's what an artist is,
Mhm.
and it's whatever kind of artist you are. It's aloneness, being with that imagination, coming up with those amazing ideas. So those are all the strengths, because if we didn't have people like that, we wouldn't have so many of our, scientific discoveries and just all kinds of things in the world that you need that for. I'm not that. My strength isn't organized. That's my disposition. So, but the strengths can also be the downfall, right?
Absolutely.
So there you are, and you're alone with, you know what? Let me read this, because this story, I think, tells it all. And it's a boy, but it's the same thing. This teacher was trying to convince an expert that this child in her class was ADD. Okay. And so she says, it all adds up. You wait and see. He's got it all right. The it is ADD. I was there to visit her second grade classroom, observing a little sinner, which is what it says, named Carlo. The it he supposedly had was ADD. Most classrooms I visit are lovely, but here the teacher stood in front of 18 seated second graders and described phonics. The children were to listen to a stream of words about vowel teams. And so Carlo turned sideways. His head was tipped up and his gaze remained fixed through the 30-minute lesson. When the group was dismissed, the teacher said, "What did I tell you? ADD. That boy didn't listen to a word I said." Later, I saw Carlo and I said, "Tell me, do you remember what you were thinking about back there in the phonics lesson?" "Sure," he said. "Didn't you see? There was a sunbeam coming in the window, and inside were all these little dust particles. They were kind of dancing and rotating the same pattern. Then I started wondering whether all the air in the room had the same kind of dust particles. Maybe the particles in the dust sunbeam moved because they were extra warm, or maybe they all..." See, this is our little scientist.
Right. Right.
And he goes, "I don't know. Do you?" He's saying it to this. And so this person writing the article says, "No, I didn't know that, but I did know that this boy could focus and sustain attention. And while I'm semi-glad the teacher had heard of ADD, I weep for the children being labeled with this word."
Yes.
Then it goes on, because, and here's the other thing about ADD. Usually it'll say they cannot focus on, school type learning work.
Right.
And then they go on to say things like building with Legos or drawing don't count. What do you mean they don't count? Because those same kids like you will spend hours drawing, painting.
Especially when there's an interest. If there's a deep
yes, it's what your interest is. You're building, doing some kind of a science thing, putting things together, whatever. And so why doesn't that count? Because that means you can focus and sustain attention. And here's the thing, if a person really could never, ever focus on anything, that's a medical diagnosis.
Right. Right.
That would be a disorder.
Yeah.
If I couldn't sit here, or you couldn't sit here,
Mm-hmm.
talking to me, and you were like, jumping around, and I know you need to move. I know you're energetic, but still, you can
Yeah.
sit here. You
Yeah.
can,
Oh, yeah.
we can have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You can go draw or put plants in, flowers in your or whatever. You can
Right.
sustain attention. That is
Mhm.
not the same. If you've ever seen a person, child or adult, who truly has hyperactivity or some kind of
Right.
ADD
Right.
thing,
Absolutely.
they cannot,
Mm-hmm.
even being interested in something, they cannot. And that's supposed to be a medical diagnosis. But these kinds of things, like these stories that I've been, telling, that's not it.
Mm-hmm. And
That
I want to add, as a teacher, a certified special education teacher, and I
yeah,
have a master's in special education, and worked several years alongside teachers like that, who would often come into my room and say, "This kid has ADHD." First of
yeah.
all, that's illegal. I hate to break it to you, but that's illegal, and you are not allowed to say that. I'm not allowed to say that, and you're not allowed to say that. That it has to be a formal diagnosis. I'm talking through the school system. That has to be
Yes,
a formal
yes,
thing. You
I
cannot just
understand.
label a child. And I would
Hmm.
try my best in all my gentleness, which I'm not the most gentle person, to tell them you are not allowed to say that. And the very fact that the mindset of the teacher is thinking those words over that child, I I can guarantee you they're treating them that way.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it was interesting, like a certain amount of rage that would rise up in a teacher, anger.
Hmm.
And I'm like, why are you taking this personal? First of all, do you know the story of this child? Do you know what they're dealing with? Do you know if they had breakfast this morning? Do you know if they're reacting to, something in their orange juice and cookie that the
Hmm.
cafeteria just gave them? I mean, do you really know? And so it was just that assumption that used to really break my heart. I used to walk into classrooms where teachers would out loud shame a child as soon as I walked in. Oh,
Hmm.
he's not paying attention. He's not listening, right in front of his peers. And my phrase used to be, bullying begins in the classroom. It began in the classroom with the teacher.
Yeah.
Shaming these children. And these kiddos would start out fabulous in the beginning of the year.
Hmm.
But at the end of the year, they were being sent to the office. They were acting out. They were fighting. They were getting into all these altercations with other children because they were angry. And
Yes.
so my whole question sometimes is the behavior that we're seeing a reflection of the way these children are being received or rejected? Do you know what I'm saying? Is this something that's being grown in the petri dish in the classroom?
Absolutely, because when you feel terrible about yourself, if you're continually being, shamed or talked down to, or you get that message, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart, I'm not this, I'm not
Right.
that. I mean, what are you going to do with that? You're not valuable. You have nothing to contribute, apparently. And you're all wrong. You're doing everything all wrong. So
Right.
what are you going to do? One of two things. You were talking about self-inflicted injury. It often doesn't go that far, like
Mhm.
physical injury, but there's injury inside of you. You just take
Right.
it all in, and you
Yes.
can become depressed, upset,
Correct.
more of a loner,
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
or you take it out on somebody else. We
Mhm.
certainly know a lot of, those stories,
Yeah.
tragic happenings of,
Right. Right.
people being violent, young people, in teenagers, people in their 20s, they go on a shooting spree. What do you find out about them? Usually they were bullied.
They were bullied. They
They were
were right.
bullied. They
Right.
they were different.
Yes.
And like you said, it kind of starts in school, because if everybody's hearing the teachers, the adults, saying things about them, and
Mhm.
then people are going to
They're
make more fun of them.
right.
Whether this is going on, in homeschool or in classrooms, we need to have kids feel safe. And
Correct.
safe that's the number one requirement for learning to take place.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
safety is not just nobody will, hit you. It isn't just physical safety. It's emotional safety. It's
Mhm.
learning safety.
Mhm.
If I'm not getting this, if I can't do this math problem, nobody's going to come and say, you're not trying. You
Correct.
didn't listen.
Correct.
No, they're going to try to find out, oh, hey, okay, let's see what's going on. Which
Yeah.
part did you get? Which part didn't you get? And to say not everybody gets everything at the same pace, or the same time, but to respect all
Mhm.
different kinds of learners. And if everybody in the learning situation, whether it's at home or at, school, sees that respect from the adult to all the different kinds of learning,
Mhm.
and that adult is providing opportunities for the kids to even work together, like, oh, you can contribute this because you're the imaginative person. And what do you think about doing this for the project because you're the organized person? And then they see how all the parts fit together. We
Right.
need all of you.
That's right.
And then within that, they can teach skills and start to learn skills. And by the way, Don, I think when you say about you always are talking and you just blurt things out,
Mhm.
and you used to say whatever and people didn't want to hear it.
I still do it.
Maybe that comes from your spontaneous, not
Yes,
your
I know.
imaginative. So you have that spontaneous piece too. In a
Mhm.
way, spontaneous people have a better chance
Hmm.
of not coming out so damaged,
Right. Right.
because spontaneous people are out there and they kind of
Mm.
go, I don't care what you think, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
they can kind of do that. But you had the combination of both, and the
Right.
imaginative person is very sensitive,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
normally
sensitive. I am sensitive,
very
but
sensitive.
my thing, I think, with my spontaneous is I just want everyone to laugh and have fun.
Yes, that's
And
the
so,
spontaneous.
yeah,
But
I
the
call it.
imaginative is, I mean, you can think of the stereotype. We have this stereotype of the starving artist, okay? Because I just think it's a good example.
Mhm.
Artists, as a rule, do not think their work is any good.
Right.
Or they think it's pretty good, but who would want to buy it? Or I don't know if anybody would really like it. And it's that sensitivity already in
Mhm.
that imaginative person
Right.
that makes them not want to put themselves out there, because it's like their whole soul is being,
It's
bared,
being exposed.
put
Yeah.
out there,
Right.
and so even their ideas, that's
Mhm.
the highest sort of acknowledgement you can give an imaginative person, is to acknowledge their ideas,
Correct.
their
Correct.
ideas that they have.
That's
But
good.
instead, you were asking about, I forgot how you said it, but the way they're looked at as the bad side of how they're looked
Mhm.
at is, it could be that they're lazy because they're
Mhm.
seen as just sitting there, or that they don't pay attention, they don't
Right.
listen, because they're looking at the dust particles and wondering about the next science thing
Yeah.
that
They're creating spaceships.
they're
It's so funny because
creating.
when I worked with those kids, I was like right there with them. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I see the
Yeah,
spaceships. I
yeah,
see
yeah.
the colors, And so I don't know who was teaching who sometimes, but I
Oh,
absolutely loved it.
can I say something there? Because that reminds me, parents who are like that, because,
Mhm.
okay, we have parents who are because adults, they grow up to be imaginative adults,
Yes,
or
right,
curious, or spontaneous, or any of these. Um, and often they think they can't homeschool
right.
because they feel like, well, I'm so disorganized, or I don't get it. And
Yeah.
and no, this is a great opportunity, because if your kids, if you have any kids that also are like that, have those same
Mhm.
dispositions, you're going to have a blast.
Right.
First of all,
Oh,
you're going to understand them, And then you're going to be sort of redoing your whole school time, your whole learning of having fun and figuring out, what's the creative way of doing this. So a lot of times parents feel shame that they're not good enough,
Absolutely.
to teach their kids.
When I coach parents, we do an online assessment, which we'll be talking about in a minute here. But when I get those parents and match them up with their kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, you make the most. And if they're curious, I am curious. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to have so much fun. This is going to be, and it's interesting. If they have that high curious piece, they're often really interested in homeschooling. I noticed there's a correlation there because they want to know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably something that is a gift, but it can also, like you said, it can have a boredom piece. So it can also be a non-gift. And I know myself, I'll go, today I'll say, I'm starting school. And then when I delve into it and look at everything, I'm like, maybe not. Because, it's bigger than I imagined, right? But my imagination.
Your imagination.
Places,
yeah.
Doesn't mean it's over yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Whereas an organized person like me can think of the more practical right up front.
Yes.
I might say I want to start my own school. Let's just use that as an example, and not have that emotional piece to it. And then think, okay, it involves this. Do I still want to do it? Am I still passionate about it? I could.
Right.
But I might not want to either because I know how much work,
So where does that emotional piece come in? Is that in with the more the imaginative or the curious? Like, is there a correlation there?
Well, do you also have high supportive?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So we haven't mentioned that yet.
I got them all.
High supportive feels everything that everybody else feels. Okay. And so you're always wanting to make everything right for everybody and have everything be fair and fix things. If somebody's not, things aren't too great to people, right? Right. You want to make everybody happy. And so that's the emotional piece.
Yeah.
Comes
Okay.
in.
Yeah.
And for imaginative, the emotional would be more inside. But for the supportive, it's more outside. What can I do for you? What can I do for you? How can I make things better for you? I'm feeling sorry for people or just empathy.
Well, it can be quite annoying as well because I oftentimes offer information that people never ask for.
Yeah.
I'm like, you need more calcium or magnesium, or you need more fruits and vegetables, and they're like, didn't ask you.
Yeah, so that's the stereotype of supportive people, that you're nosy and into everybody's business and want to fix everything for everybody, right?
I know.
There's always this side and that side.
Correct. Right.
But so that's one of the reasons we, Victoria and I, developed the self-portrait assessment. Because look, there's not enough time, to talk about all of it today, but we have in there 5 areas of strengths that we look at. It's the dispositions, the modalities, your interests, which are so important to look at. They're the number one motivators are your interests and passions, talents, and your the best work or study environment, your surroundings. And so you mentioned that you're the owner and director of Solomar Academy. And so maybe I should say that Victoria and I started Solomar.
Yes, I was going to ask you that. That's next here on my list.
So,
Tell it.
We use the self-portrait with everyone who came in, all the students, the parents, and that's how we personalized learning. And so, of course, you loved that.
I love it.
When we were ready to, move on after, I don't know, 30 years or something of having that, we passed it on to you. So now you've got Solomar Academy. That's the same, you have the same approach. That you're going to look at their strengths with the
Mhm.
self-portrait and go from there and discuss, oh, you have an imaginative student. And we have even, helps with that, like people who, families who do take that self-portrait, there's a whole guide too. So, I mean, of course, we do,
Consulting.
consultations, and you do that with
Right.
the families coming in, but there's also a guide that they can download or print out and
Right.
continually refer to. So for example, an imaginative person, number one, contributing ideas. That's number
Mhm.
one for them. They
Mhm.
need time for observation and
Mhm.
creativity and thinking quietly by themselves and wondering about things. And that's
Mhm.
why they look spacey. These are the words, you're spacey, you're in la la land, you're
Mhm.
flexible, you're not listening, all of that.
Can I
But
share something on that too before you go on with the rest of them? Something about the inventive personality that I've noticed is if I don't have those things, that
mm-hmm,
quiet time, that reflective time, the creative time, I'm like
mm-hmm,
a loony bin. Okay. And I
yeah,
think years of my life actually displayed that in a sense. And there was a lot of chaos for me. But now that I've learned to build like a morning routine, where first of all, it starts the night before. I go to bed very early. I get 7 hours
mm-hmm,
of sleep. I get up, I go outside, stand on the grass, do my breathing exercises. For me, I have time with God, prayer, and then I
mm-hmm,
get into his word and I read. I do a little devotional thing, and then I come in, I take a shower, even a cold shower, and I just, get some exercise after that. Like that routine piece is essential for my mental
for
health.
you, uh-huh,
Because before, without that, I was just lost. I don't know how to explain that, but that, like you said, that reflective time, that journaling, that's where I journal. That's where I'll go into my art studio. Maybe I'll paint something and
right.
journal over it.
Well,
And
it's grounding you,
it's
right?
grounding.
It's
And that's
grounding you.
very important. It's
Yeah,
very important. And so
yeah,
I think a lot of these kids that have these labels and this chaos going on, they're overstimulated, number one,
yes,
from social media or whatever. They're not getting their nutritional needs and they're not having a space. When I coach parents that are homeschooling, I always say, okay, we have to create a space for your child
yes.
in that house or in their room that's designated for their creativity, for their learning. And it's
Yes,
amazing what that
and
does.
sometimes, especially with imaginative and curious kids, because they need that time alone,
Yes.
um, they're they're put through the, like, they're nonstop. If they're in regular school, then
Right.
they've got this after school and this after school and then this and this and this. And even some, homeschooling kids, there's too much. I remember a family years ago, and these kids were actually in traditional school. They were not homeschooling, but the whole family was spontaneous type,
Wow.
except for this one boy.
Wow.
He was in middle school, and he was imaginative and curious.
Wow.
Well, this whole spontaneous group of them, they were into sports because that's one of the ways, and they were going to all these sports things, whether some of the kids were in sports or they were going to, like games and all these things, professional teams, whatever. This poor kid was never getting time to be by himself. He was being dragged home. He couldn't care less. And he just was not that type of personality anyway. So when they learned that,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was not required anymore to go to everything that they were going
I
to.
love
And
that.
it
That is
changed
life
their
changing.
lives. It just
It
changed their
is life changing. I wish I would have known some of these things as a parent,
lives.
especially homeschooling. I was a very excited homeschooler. I wanted to do all these things. Let's try this. Let's try that. And I think it drove my oldest daughter, like, mom, like a little, like she thought I was crazy because she was more, I would say, imaginative and reflective and deeper, sensitive. And I was just like, oh, why are we doing it? Look, and I just didn't have that sensitivity to that and that knowledge. And I mean, it's embarrassing now, to be honest. And I just have to work on self-compassion and forgiveness, like all the time. Like I didn't know. But that is why I'm on this journey to help other parents to understand a new way, a new lens to see their child. And I know that's been your
Yeah.
work. But you
And
were
that's why a coach is often very important. I've had so many parents say, when I first came to see you, I thought, oh my gosh, really? Like I might say no reading this year because it was traumatic and we worked different way, whatever it was that happened, watch movies instead of reading the book or do project, whatever it was that was alternative for that student's learning needs. Later, the parent would say, I have letters that parents have sent me. I thought, oh my gosh, really? I was relieved, but at the same time, I thought, well, if anybody gets in trouble, it'll be you because you're the one that said to do that.
correct.
And then, they've said, and here we are, and my kid is reading and going to college and doing this and this and that and that. And I know if they had been in a traditional setting, or even a traditional homeschooling program, that would not have happened.
Correct.
Because that child would not have thrived and would have felt so terrible that he or she would not have learned to read and would have or whatever the, thing was.
I have an amazing story. I know I've shared this with you with a parent. I was teaching a workshop on learning styles, and the parent raised her hand and she said, Miss Dawn, had you been my teacher, I'd be a rocket scientist today.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, they put me in special education and they didn't know what to do with me. And that parent was going on now to homeschool her own children because she didn't want that to happen to them. She recognized similarities in her children and she was like, no, they're not going to get those stigmas. They're not going to get that kind of shaming for not fitting in the box, right? And that's one of our phrases with Solimar. Solimar is for kids who think out of the box because we think out of the box. And we teach parents to think out of the box. A lot of times in homeschooling, parents will replicate what they grew up and learned in education. And then when their kids don't fit into that box, they think either they're doing something wrong, so they quit, or two, there's something wrong with their child. And I'm not talking about real, special education, truly, actual.
Oh yes, we
I'm
really
talking
do
about
have,
just your natural learners, like spontaneous child, for example. Spontaneous children need some gentle kid glove care. I call them the joy bringers. So just so you know, I changed it a little bit. When I have a parent whose child's highly spontaneous, like, well, they won't listen, they won't learn, they won't sit down. Okay, let's figure out why. Let's figure out how they do learn. Let's figure out their learning styles. But I always say, are they the joy bringers in your life? Do they make you laugh and smile? And they stop and they're like, yes. And they start smiling. And it's like, oh yeah, they really are. Reframing the way we see our children. Instead of they're bullies or they're, hard, they can't learn. And I can't words, but just saying, okay, so they learn in a way I don't learn. I had a mom the other day say to me, she created a space in her house for her student that had those little walls, those little cardboard walls you can create around for him. He loves them. He sits there. That's his school. That's his work. Mom says, I could never do that. Exactly. And so because you could never do that, you didn't think of it. But I thought of it because I know that some kids really benefit from that. And this little guy was like in there up before she even wakes up. And doing his work. Because he has his environment, his space. And I really like the fact that she used colors. She didn't pick white because I was thinking white, but she picked like a pretty blue or something. So anyway, let me jump ahead a little bit.
Well, you mentioned reframe. So I wanted to say that the way I reframe ADD is attention to dreams and discoveries, because that is what the imaginative person really does do.
That's so beautiful.
It's misinterpreted all the time as a disorder when really it's not.
It's not.
And you know what? There are a lot of amazing teachers out there in classrooms. I mean, you were one of them. You were one of the, good special ed teachers. But but our system really ties the hands of even really good teachers.
Mhm.
It's just so ingrained of how, everybody learns the same thing and everybody's got to do this and we've got these grades. So it's very hard for teachers
Mhm.
to try to personalize. They've done it. There are teachers who've done it. And once they get how to do it, it's easier. Once you get it, then, but there's some work involved to get there.
Mhm.
And, but the system makes it harder.
It does make it harder. I
Yeah.
know that. I know I was probably reprimanded once because I didn't fit in the box, and I was literally told that. And I'm like, oh, that's a good thing, right?
You mean as a teacher, right?
The teacher.
Yeah.
It was my first year of teaching, but I just thought that learning should be about play and interacting and language and joy. And that's not the way it always works. So I know in Solomar we have a different take because we do personalized learning. But I want to say, and I always tell our parents this, we also take into consideration the parent and the parent that's teaching the child, how they learn and what their needs are. So if you have this spontaneous parent or spontaneous child, but a very organized parent, and I've had that reversed, by the way. That was fun.
Yes, you can reverse. You can have a spontaneous parent and an organized
child.
Yeah.
They're like, get your stuff together, Mom. You're crazy.
Yeah.
But with helping them to understand how their child learns and how to navigate and work through the energy with strategies and tools, which you said comes in the profile, the self-portrait has like a guide for your child. It's amazing. And so we always use that to create the year-long learning plan. We include the children in having them be a part of the things that they want to learn and research and study. And then we also have them be a part of their grading process. Like, what kind of a grade do you want in this class? And we'll either use colors or actual grades. And then we break down with them what that actually looks like and what it's going to take to achieve that. And it's a collaboration. It's a collaboration with parents, students, and I have so many stories around that. We do not have time for that time here. But what would you say is, let me go back to my notes here, is the best part about this, about Solomar and what you've seen and the self-portrait and how those things work together?
Oh, the best part. Well, I mean, the best part is if you're homeschooling, you're free. You can do anything. And so the most fun for me is customizing the learning plan for the year, no matter what grade it is.
Right.
No matter if it's a first grade or, senior in high school, it's just amazing. Just the kids are, for example, this one student that came to me in 9th grade, was a girl, and the mom said, she's failing everything at school. She's failing. And so, of course, we gave the self-portrait. She was imaginative. That was one of her highest. And so that first year, so when we have the consultation, I talk to them like, it looks like you might like to do this. What do you think? Because they don't know any options.
Right.
Nobody's ever given them options, all they know is they do this and take the test, right?
Yeah.
So I introduced the idea of scrapbooking for,
I remember that.
For history, literature. Well, she did this beautiful thing. I still have
I remember that. It's amazing.
You remember that? Well, okay. So that was 9th grade. And then in 10th grade, she said, we're planning 10th grade. I didn't have to do anything. She had all these ideas because now she knew, oh, maybe I could do that. She said, can I do history through the Olympics? What? Yeah. I never thought of that. This book, it's huge. It doesn't even fit in the frame. It's huge. And you've seen it.
I've seen it. It's amazing. And, since then, I've used those similar strategies with our students. I have a student right now who is very creative. Just really quick, she did a journaling. I taught her some art through art supplies and different modalities of art. And she took that to a hill. Now her and mom and I were discussing for next year, possibly creating a vegan cookbook for kids.
Oh my gosh.
Because she's also a cook and she's an amazing cook.
Yes.
She takes all these cooking classes to incorporate her art into a cooking class, into a cookbook for kids. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited.
I mean, talk about writing and
everything.
English
research, writing.
And it could include history of nutrition, history, all that kind of stuff integrated together. It is the most amazing process ever. And it's different for every child.
Right.
And so anyway, this girl in that book, she did it all herself. I didn't even give her any idea. She did through the Olympics. She did like the history, the economics of the different countries that they were going to. Just all of
art. She did art. I remember all of that. Mariaemma, I have to kind of cut us off a little bit. I'm so sad. I think you and I could talk for hours and hours. And I just want to mention to everyone, she is a coach in Solomar. So her and Victoria.
Oh, yes.
And we love having them. What's that?
I'm one of your coaches now.
You're one of my coaches now. I know she coached me. Now she's still coaching me. And I just want to, if anyone's interested in Solomar Academy, we are a private independent school program. That's why we have all this beautiful flexibility. And you can reach us at solomaracademy.com. You can also reach Mariaemma at her website there. And also, I just want to say that today for Solomar Academy, we offer consultations and the self-portrait even outside of our school. You don't have to be a student in our school. And we usually charge $375, but if you're interested, we're going to charge $325 and give you a special break if you mention this podcast that you heard it today. We would love to meet you, even if you just have questions and you're curious about, how would your child work in this situation? We would love to talk to you. Do you have any last words, Mariaemma, for our families today?
Just that the most important thing is to help kids figure out who they are, what's their mission in life, and to do that, we have to first find out how they're made. How did their creator make them,
Right.
And what do they have inside of them that it's like you're the instrument to help bring that out.
That is so true. What a joy. And it's been my privilege to share with the families through this avenue. Also through just knowing Mariaemma and Victoria, it's been life-changing for me, a woman when I was 50, just kind of straggling through life. And I want to share a really fun thing. I have a minute here. After I took that self-portrait, I realized that I was an artist, that there was an artist in me. I always looked at it like, nobody will like my art. It's stupid. What am I doing? I went on to be in juried art shows, in art museums, selling my art, still sell my art today. And it's just been an incredible blessing. But more importantly, seeing my passion and my heart and my giftedness, I learned it through you. And again, I thank you. Thank you both. And wish you all the best. And I know we're going to have you back here soon.
Okay.
Going to do it again. So thanks, everyone. I think we're done. Have a great day. Bye.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.